Aloha. I wanted to share an expansion of the last few videos I put together, kind of lock it into the my personal journey of information threads that I'd had to siphon through and discern on my own, and kind of like what I've come to believe and feel and understand, and see how this is all put together as far as how the United Nations is locked into channeling, and channeling is locked into the New Age movement, and the New Age movement is locked into quantum physics and astrophysics, and the old understandings, the old mythologies, and the new ideas of what and who we are, and this whole new age artificial movement that is going on, that is just the precursor to the global agenda and the new world order and the new world religion and the new world understanding of what this whole earth plane existence is, and kind of explain in a little more depth how the new age is focused on the old school community with science and religion, and the younger generation with sacred geometry and chakras and crystals and meditation and new school science, astrophysicists, astro or quantum computers, this whole computer version of reality. And kind of start with, this is a new article that was posted today. This is back from Collectively Conscious, that website that pulls from other websites like Spirit Science down. I don't know if it's down here. Yeah, so Spirit Science. So this is an example of all these other stories. So like, these stories are, what it means to be collectively conscious, and they mix in resonant information with coded information to usher in the new agenda. And this, I woke up this morning, this was the first story on here, and this was a good example for going into expanding what I've been talking about and showing how it's very slick and very noticeable when you start to add up all the pieces with CERN, and people who are talking about CERN is Mandela effect is only about CERN, and quantum physics, and this whole thing to usher in the fear mentality. So CERN and the New World Order and all that stuff makes people believe, because it's basically energy. So fear and love are energy centers, emotional threads that get triggered on like the soul level. And when you have your information streams that are given to you, and you've been separated from your intuition, your claircognizance, and your clairaudience, that whole space of connection that is beyond understanding or beyond explanation. And those centers get turned off when the science, Big Bang, no meaning, no purpose space comes into your reality and locks you into the physical representation of your space. So people are already understanding infinity and their soul, and this whole, so this is basically like a shifting moment into the next gear of human consciousness, and this science community has to evolve itself by consuming the religious community and other versions like the mainstream media, the politics. It has to consume all of those energy systems to build up a new system of enslavement and control. And since we are evolving our consciousness to be more aware of things, it can't come from a totally fear-based or lockdown system anymore. It has to evolve into a kind of happy-go-lucky chakra system, peace and understanding version of manipulation. And this is spirit science. This came out in like, or at least I became aware of spirit science in like 2011 and late 2011, and I went into finding out a lot about sacred geometry. This triggered a lot of stuff for me, and then after a while I was like, this stuff is not at all resonating. This is very coded. It's very limiting. It's very just like air. It's just empty. It was just empty information. The details of the information itself. The information itself is not coming from spirit science. Like the flower of life is not from, they're not creating any of these perspectives or anything. They're just regurgitating ancient stuff and energies that already exist and put it in like a cartoon format and something that would resonate with people. So they created a resonance and then sold it as a layer of interaction that is different than the normal like mainstream and all this other stuff, and also allows people to get into another space of interaction and information. But what happens is the way this is pieced together is a perfect example of the New Age mentality, or the New Age limitation grid that is out there, and stuff like the Human History movie that is on here is a good example how they only come from one layer, still integrating in the Big Bang stuff, Atlantis, and ascended masters, and all this other stuff. It's a complex version of information that is layered with some truth and but it's more layered with a code of control. And you can see it right here where it says this story may be a little cosmic. It may not even be true, but you will have to decide that for yourself. So it's hard to explain because there's so many different stories that are interwoven within this space, and it all matters when you're talking about control in itself. And I just wanted to use spirit science as an example of how the younger generation is finding itself locked into limitation grids and separation models through rationale of the whatever the New Age version of dealing with things or understanding things puts out. So like the channelers put out that whole, those are those people experiencing that reality. It's a fear-based reality. We won't engage in that anymore. And then that stuff just gets repeated. And then you have like this dichotomy, this separation of yourself, because you've seen the flower of life in like the ancient temples. You've seen it all over the world. You've seen you've seen sacred geometry and nature. You've seen all of these. You've seen the math and all the toroidal fields and this whole. You've seen all this stuff in other places. So and you trust. It triggers your trusting emotional grid. And this is another way that I was looking at how the NASA flag with the seed of life is on it. So it's just like another thread that I was seeing being put together. But my main focus was for this video is these quantum physicists and these astrophysicists who are going to be the spokesmen and women of how we experience our reality of this new age of humanity. And these stories are being put out there they tell you what your change is. So I'll play some examples in a second. So they tell you like everything that's bad in order to create a state of, oh, this is good. You inherently close the gap. So they talk about the economy, they talk about the education system, they talk about scientists and energy, talk about health and the mainstream media and the environment. They talk about leadership and politicians. And money, the fiat currency. They talk about values, and they talk about your societal health and well-being. You're like, oh, that's all good stuff, and they just mix in consciousness and humble and all this other stuff. And here's your spokesperson, Dr. Amit Goswami, and he's gonna tell you dot 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 dot. And I'll just play this part so you can.
Volkswagen Beetles first, and now Volkswagen Rabbit and so forth. But they have been caught in a major scandal. They were cheating on the emission standards by creating a software which doesn't show.
So this
enough,
is
doesn't show too much emission when it is idling, and that's when the tests are made.
So these scientists, these quantum physicists are going to tell you we need global change and this address climate change and understand our reality from whatever, and tell you how bad everything is, and they're going to present to you the solutions.
As it goes to movement, the emissions are of course beyond the regulations, much beyond the regulations. So they were really openly cheating and openly caught. And now, that is the standard of ethics.
So these are the bad guys he's talking about.
Manufacturers are getting away with similar fraud.
Just like Bernie Sanders with the bankers.
As desperate as situation with chronism and situation with resources going out, or situation with
global warming. So these quantum physicists are going to be like the Bernie Sanders of the science community. So their bad guys are going to be like the climate control or the climate abusers, and Bernie Sanders is the bankers who are the fiat currency abusers. So the science community is going to found itself within the quantum understandings or interpretations of how we exist on this space, and bring in this new version of how we exist here and what we should change based upon a response to how the system was broke in the first place. And this will distract everybody from the injustices that have occurred over the last centuries, and also distract people from their maximum potential in experiencing their consciousness, and just experiencing a consciousness that has been pre-wrapped.
Warming, that the pollution from the production.
They talk about, just like Bernie Sanders talks about money, and
everything is out of
scientists
control.
are talking about, how the climate is out of control. These are all.
We know the banking system is a
Shut
part
up.
of the iron system that is.
So they link
out
in
to
all this
manifest.
stuff. They link in all these interwoven together, all the all the banking systems, all this stuff gets linked in, and then these quantum physicists put this stuff out in your face. They're so smart you can't question them at all. And when they have people like Brian Cox, who speaks about the Big Bang, and he's talking about science and astrophysicists and the moons of Jupiter and Europa, and this whole he sells it. You'll see how it's all sold to you with a very soft accent, and since you've been conditioned to believe this stuff your entire lives by listening to David Attenborough and all of these other people that have these calming accents for you because you've been conditioned within a white supremacist reality. Their quantum physicists will usher in your idea of what the world really is, and you'll just have to believe it because you are a sheep. Like you're locked in to whatever it is they tell people. It's just so messed up, and I get irritated because I used to I used to listen to and really like believe this stuff, and then like science, spirit science, and these people, and then I not necessarily like putting them up on anything. I was just like, you feel a sense of betrayal. You feel a sense of like, like these are real people, and when they put this stuff out, maybe they don't have on the most innocent space. Maybe they don't have an intent. Maybe they're just being utilized. Maybe they meant well, and then they kind of ran into a wall or whatever on the most innocent space. But like my brother in the past, he used to be like, "Oh, these people are straight up put out there. They're straight up part of the whole extension of the education system. There's no different." And I had to let that resonate for me for over time, and it just became true. I was just like, "Oh man, this is a thing." And TED was obvious to me because of it's blatantly obvious about how they're bringing in the transhumanism agenda, but to zero in on how these quantum physicists and astrophysicists are going to sell you your scientific creation story of the globe model in order to water down your understandings of your organic creative space and creative connections. So yeah, I wanted to start it. Yeah, that's good.
Less than a billionth of a second after the universe began, up to 600 million times a second inside that detector. Immense numbers. And if you see those metal bits there, those are huge magnets that bend electrically charged particles so we can measure how fast they're traveling. This is a picture about a year ago. Those magnets are in there, and again, an EU standard size real person, so you get some sense of the scale. And it's in there, those mini Big Bangs will be created sometime in the summer this year. And actually this morning I got an email saying that we've just finished today building the last piece of Atlas. So as of today, it's finished. I'd like to say that I plan.
So he's working on the system of Atlas, and CERN is just finished today. We just did it. Like, I'm so smiley and happy, and Big Bang programming, and they built this big machine and it had to be miles long. It had to be a whole bunch of scientists, and I'll start it in the beginning so you can see how they program you to believe this stuff by setting up a foundation of trust. So it's just like, we got a bunch of scientists, we got a bunch of smart people, we got a bunch of money and a bunch of big pieces of machinery, and a lot of people are involved, and this is what we came up with. And then you are pretty much dumb to not believe or listen to what they have to say because he has that accent, and you trust scientists, and the whole system as a whole that we've been indoctrinated into is set up for you. This is how, in every video, this is how they rationalize or make you believe what it is that they're saying when they say stuff like this.
It's the biggest scientific experiment ever attempted. Over 10,000 physicists and engineers
10,000.
from 85 countries around the world
85
put together
countries.
over several decades to build.
Several
this.
decades.
What we do is we accelerate protons.
Whoa!
So high.
That's a lot of stuff. You're just like, oh, well, now I gotta believe whatever he says now, because all those people can't be full of shit. Yes, they can. So, or either yes, they can, and maybe a lot of them don't know. So they put stuff like, he's gonna tell you, like, this document right here is the answer to everything except gravity. And then within here, there's a problem. And can anybody find the problem? And the problem is the H, one letter in there, which stands for Hadron Collider or Hadron Molecule. And coincidentally, they have a giant machine called CERN, the super collider, that has discovered this molecule that fits the bill for this giant equation that they have put together. Oh, and I forgot to mention, he's called Atlas, the one he was working on, and this is the Greek god Atlas, FYI. Alright, so I'll play this.
A little disingenuous could have expanded it out in all its gory detail. This equation, though, allows you to calculate everything other than gravity.
Everything!
So you want to know why the sky is blue, why atomic nuclei stick together. In principle, if you had a big enough computer, why DNA is the shape it is.
Oh.
In principle, you should be able to calculate it from that equation.
Oh.
But there's a problem.
But
Can anyone see what it is? I have a bottle of champagne for anyone that tells me. I'll make it easier, actually, by blowing one of the lines up. Basically, each of these terms refer to some of the particles. So those W's there refer to the W's and how they stick together, these carriers of the weak force. The Z's the same. But there's an extra symbol in this equation, H.
So just as goodness, they create this system of complexity, and you're too dumb. You're just too simple to understand how complex this is. So this is their pedestals. They built these machines, they built these equations, they built these perspectives, and they put these headpieces out there in front of you to make yourself little. And they create giants, and these giants sell you a story that is just another step towards a deeper enslavement and a deeper control. And stuff like the CERN machine is out there to have you questioning your reality in relation to observations that you don't need a machine to see. Stuff like the Mandela effect that is directly engaged in, from my perspective, the splitting of dimensions and how our consciousness is engaged in creating our reality and interacting with our reality as a whole. And the more and more people are separating themselves from these limitation grids of giant equations and giant machines that are just meant to confuse and dumb down consciousness itself to be a low vibrating battery for the artificial giants that have been created. Yeah, so
Right, H.
okay,
H
another
stands
part
for
after
Higgs
this.
particle. Higgs particles have not
So yeah,
been
or
discovered,
excuse me, I said
but
earlier,
they're
it's
necessary.
hadron. It's the
They're
Higgs particle.
necessary to make that mathematics work.
So they created a particle, the Higgs particle, so they can make a machine to find this particle, and then that machine, they create these mini Big Bangs and all these like speed of light point how 9999999 all the he says all this to the speed of light. We did it. We did this machine. We made this machine into the 90th 99th percentile of the speed of light, and this is what our reality is all about. And this is all a big show. It's a big orchestration, and the math is your
All the exquisitely
composer.
detailed calculations we can do with that wonderful equation wouldn't be possible without an extra bit. So it's a prediction of a new particle. What does it do? Well, we had a long time to come up with good analogies, and back in the 1980s,
So these are all
we
those
wanted the money
people
for
that
the
he was
LHC
talking
from the
about.
UK government. Margaret Thatcher at the time said, if you guys can explain in language a politician can understand what the hell it is that you're doing, you can have the money. I want to know what this Higgs particle does. And we came up with this analogy and it seemed to work. What the Higgs does is it gives mass to the fundamental particles. And the picture is that the whole universe, and that doesn't mean just space, it means me as well and inside you, the whole universe is full of something called a Higgs field, Higgs particles, if you will. The analogy is that these people in a room, the Higgs particles. Now, when a particle moves through the universe, it can interact with these Higgs particles. But imagine someone who's not very popular moves through the room. Then everyone ignores them. They can just pass through the room very quickly, essentially at the speed of light. They're massless. And imagine someone
they're
incredibly
telling you-
important and popular and intelligent walks into the room. They're surrounded by people and their passage through the room is impeded. It's almost...
They're telling you that they understand the speed of light and matter. And you exist within light and matter. And basically, these are your creators. Scientists, astrophysicists, quantum physicists are putting themselves out there to be an example of your creator, because they create these systems of limited elementary understandings of your reality. And just trust us, trust this agenda, and go with it. Don't ask any questions. If you ask any questions, something's wrong with you. You're crazy. And that's it. Just vote. Shut your mouth. You live on a globe. The Mandela effect is created by the machine, not you. Like, you have no power. Your consciousness is just a result of the Big Bang, and this is how he's gonna.
With these wonderful creation stories of the people, the high Andes and of the frozen north.
See, this is how they.
Story, I think,
this is how they.
wonderful. The story goes.
This is how they mix it in. They make you believe it even more. So they take all the ancient indigenous stories and then say, this is what those primitive people thought in the Andes, and this is what us as the evolved monkeys think about our creation story. And yeah, they mix it all in and then put themselves up higher.
It's like this. We know that the universe began 13.7 billion years ago in an immensely hot, dense state, much smaller than a single atom.
Like, who's going to
Began
question
to
that?
expand about a million billionth of a second. I think
Who's
I got
going to
that right.
question that?
After the Big Bang, gravity separated away from the other forces. The universe then underwent an exponential expansion called inflation. In about the first billionth of a second or so, the Higgs field kicked in, and the quarks, and the gluons, and the electrons that make us up got mass. The universe continued to expand and cool. After about a few minutes, there was hydrogen and helium in the universe.
Okay.
That's all. The universe was about 75% hydrogen, 25% helium. It still is today. It continued to expand. About 300 million years, then light began to travel through the universe. It was big enough to be transparent to light, and that's what we see in the cosmic.
Basically, you get the idea. You get the idea of how They're putting themselves out there and mixing and matching the old with the new. So they got people locked in with sacred geometry, ancient mythology, indigenous stories, new mainstream science and scientists and technology. Big Bang Theory on television to make you condition yourself every day. The whole universe is in a hot dense state, and then a whole like it's like keeping you docile, keeping you in that, you know, that subtle space of, well, let's just go on with it every day, and then holding you stagnant, just like those channels do that I did that I was speaking on in the last video. It's just, you know, things are changing, things are gonna change, and yeah, spirit science, you know, and these like empty human stories, these half truths or mistruths, holes in these human stories. And then they mix in, just like the United Nations. I think there's a channeling, unless he took it down. There was even a channeling video in here too, so it's all mixed in. And they mix in like the political ideas and stuff like this. And there goes channeling right there, and they relate it to your animals, your pets. It's like, oh, this is information. You're channeling information and connecting on another realm to your cat and your dog, and they can communicate with you, and they break this stuff down. It's just like another cartoon version of quantum physics. But this is all a sedative. All of it. It's a sedative. The channels, the quantum physicists, the Big Bang Theory television, or a television show, no different than the mainstream media. So it's a sedative to keep you in a space of waiting, powerlessness, batteries that are just sitting and waiting for your answers to come outside of your own power, your own understanding of your of your allness. And they use the magic of like naming the super collider Atlas to activate these subliminal and subconscious grids in your reality, from the old and the new. So I just wanted to share that, link in the quantum physicists, the scientists, the cartoon, younger generation, new age scientists, and some of the CERN talk and the Mandela effect, and how all of this is being kind of mixed together. But I'll leave it there, and thank you for joining me. Until next time, peace, love, and harmony.